Hey, my name is Frederick. In this video, I will cover CPSIA, which is a regulatory framework that applies to all children's products imported, made in, or sold to the United States. So I'm going to cover everything from ASTM to tracking labels, compliance processes, and of course explain what may happen if you sell non-compliant products. So I'm gonna go straight into it. So what is CPSIA? Now CPSIA stands for Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, and I think it's from 2008, just the late Bush era, and it regulates all imported and domestically manufactured toys and children's products, and not just toys but also children's products in the United States. And this is a federal regulation, meaning that it applies in all US states. Okay, so how does the CPSC define a children's product? Okay, and the way they do it is as following, and it's pretty clear that they don't want anything, like it's not really open for interpretation. So first of all, we have any product that is marketed as appropriate for children 12 years or younger. Okay, that's another thing that we have to remember here. Any product packaging that presents the product as appropriate. If the product display or even place of sale, such as a toy store or online store selling children's products, presents the product as appropriate for children, or if the product is generally recognized as a product primarily intended for children, then in all of these cases CPSIA applies. And we get questions all the time. People come to us, okay, I'm going to make this product in China or Vietnam or maybe even within the US, and we're not really sure if this product, well, it's sometimes considered a children's product, but I think it's somewhere in between. We always recommend our customers to, or prospective customers, anyone who contacts us really, to always implement the CPSIA framework, always comply with CPSIA, because it's just so much more expensive and time consuming to try to assess if you can somehow avoid the CPSIA compliance scope. So if you're not sure, then I still recommend that you comply with CPSA. It's just so much more straightforward and easy that way. Okay, I mean, if you're selling adult diapers, okay, it's clear you don't have to. But if anything that could possibly be interpreted as being appropriate in any way for children, then I would recommend that you comply with CPSIA. Okay, now CPSIA in itself is not a technical standard. It's not a safety standard in itself. Okay, what CPSIA says is that as an importer manufacturer, you have to assess which ASTM standards apply to your product. Okay, and this depends very much on a case-to-case basis, on a product-to-product basis. Okay, now ASTM standards, they cover everything from physical properties to heavy metals. Okay, so the scope is quite wide and you have thousands of different standards. Now the base one is ASTM F963, and I will say that pretty much everything that's sold as a children's product must comply with ASTM F963, but there are also countless others that also apply depending on the type of the product. And you can actually search, it's pretty easy. Just go to astm.org and you type in a product name and you see what comes up on the screen. Okay, so that's a good way to start. Now another little life hack is to contact a compliance testing company. You request a free quotation, you send them a product photo, material specification, well, the more detailed the better, and you ask them to confirm which ASTM standards that they will include in the lab testing procedure, because they have to present that in order to give you a free quotation. So I would advise that you reach out to Intertech, you reach out to SGS, BV, TUV, and all these compliance testing companies, and then you're probably going to get a few different quotations. You can compare that way. It's also a great way to not just get a quote for a lab test, but also to make that assessment. Okay, and it's one of the few things that those companies are willing to do for free. Yeah, they're really good at charging money. Now, documentation. This is an integral part of the CPSIA process. Not just about, okay, my product has to comply with this and that standard, and I'm going to get a lab test. There's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of paperwork that goes into this. And the good news is that you don't really, I mean, you can manage all of this on your own. So you take the CPC, for example, the Children's Product Certificate. It's basically a self-issued declaration of conformity where you specify the manufacturer name or the importer name, the country of origin, the list of ASTM standards that apply to the product name, the materials, the colors, the SKU. You can even find a free template on the CPSC website. So it's quite straightforward. Now, for some products, well, specifically durable infant and toddler products, you may also need to create a consumer registration card. But the specific items, the specific content you need is also provided free of charge on the CPSC website. I think it's cpsc.gov. You also need a test report, okay? And the test report is mandatory. I'm going to go into a bit greater detail about the testing process later, but this is part of your documentation, okay? You need a test report that proves that your product is compliant with the regulations, well, specifically the ASTM standards that apply to your product. And the ASTM standards listed in the test report must also match what's specified on the CPC, okay? And you also need a testing plan. Well, a testing plan is essentially a basically stating if we ever change the color, the design, the materials, then we will retest the product, okay? And assuming we will not make any change, because say that you have a range of different products, you're probably going to add new products in the future, and you should specify that new products will be tested. And even in the case that you don't make any changes to existing products, you should have some sort of frequency defined when it comes to when you should get them retested, be that on a, I don't know, quarterly basis or every second, every third order or something like that. But the first order has to be tested. Whenever you make a change, whenever you place a product on the market for the first time, then lab testing is mandatory. Okay, so that's documentation. And then we have the labeling requirements. I just want to make clear, this is actually an EU label, so don't make a screenshot here and add that to your product packaging. But yeah, the CPSIA tracking label. Okay. First we have manufacturer and importer name, the batch ID, and the batch ID is it's used to track your product. Okay, because a importer will or a manufacturer will manufacture numerous batches of the same product, okay? So basically the batch ID will tell the product name, okay, the SKU, the date or the order date, so this actually indicates June 2020 in this example, production facility. In this case, I wrote G1 at Guangzhou Factory 1, CN, China. Okay, the format that you apply is up to you, as long as you can trace the product name, the order date, and the order date doesn't have to be that specific. It doesn't have to have the day of the month, but at least a month and a year, the production facility, and the country. Okay. So as long as you can fit that in the tracking in the batch ID, then you're good to go. The reason in the batch ID is if something would go wrong with one specific batch you place on the market, okay, then you need to be able to trace that and make sure that you can issue a recall of that product, okay. So it's basically about ensuring that you can trace that to specific consumers and ensure that they can then identify if they have purchased a non-compliant, faulty or unsafe or whatever product, and send it back to you. You also need an email address, a US address for those that doesn't have the internet, quite rare these days, but yeah, that's still a requirement, and a US phone number, okay, which can be quite tricky if you are a non-US company, if you're a foreign seller importing goods into the US. So basically, my understanding is the only option you have is to set up a US entity, at least when it comes to CPSIA compliance, because you really need to have a US address. This doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have a warehouse that's unique to you, but you need to have a postal address. You need to at least have some sort of representative office, a virtual office, just anything, and a US phone number, okay? Because not everyone has the internet. That's still rare, but it's a legal requirement. And there may also be additional requirements. These regulations are amended from time to time. Not every month, but they may add additional requirements to the CPSA tracking label. Now, the thing is that you can actually get free advice from the CPSC Small Business Ombudsman. You can reach out to them through the website and basically ask them if the information, like you sort of have to create a mock-up of your CPSA tracking label, send it to them and ask, hey, does this look okay? But additional information may be required, okay? And a reminder, it's not part of the CPSIA, but pretty much everything sold in the US must carry the country of origin, made in China, made in Vietnam, made wherever. So it's not part of the CPSIA, but definitely don't want to forget that. Okay, lab testing. Now, as I mentioned previously in this video, a lab test verifies if the product is compliant with the applicable ASTM standards, and that may be just one, or it could be more, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 4, it could be 10, okay? In most cases 1, 2, maybe 3, okay? But you need a test report that covers every applicable ASTM standard for your product, okay? That's what CPSIA says. And is used as a proof of compliance and as an attachment to the CPC, the Children's Product Certificate. That's not issued by the testing company, but that's something you issue yourself, okay? And I also mentioned that already, but the ASTM standards listed on the CPC has to match the ASTM standards listed in the test report, okay? Right. So this really boils down to 4 steps. First, you have to confirm which ASTM standards apply to your product, okay? Number 2, you have to order product samples or manufacture product samples if you're a factory or an exporter, and book third-party lab testing. Not just any lab test though, because it has to be with a CPSC accredited compliance testing company, which includes CIMA in Hong Kong, Intertek worldwide, SES, TUV, Bureau Veritas, all the big ones, okay? So that's step 2. Number 3, you have to create a tracking label. Number 4, you create a CPC and a testing plan, okay? And also the registration card for certain products, okay? But yeah, this is really what it comes down to. This is the 4-step process. Now, how do the authorities check if your product is compliant? Well, they could request your CPC and a test report. That's the most straightforward way. And just cross-reference it, okay? They could even order your product online for lab testing. Or if a consumer will ever report you, then that could also trigger an investigation. Well, it will trigger an investigation. And you can report non-compliant and unsafe products on the CPSC website, okay? Now, keep in mind, compliance is not just about passing the customs. You know, it's not that simple. Many people have the idea, especially many importers and also a lot of Chinese manufacturers. Some of you might be watching this. Have this idea that I just have to get through the customs and that's it. Then I'm sorted. It's not like that. The CPSC can come back to you weeks later, months later, or worse if someone is injured. You know, that's something that can get back at you years later. So as an importer, it's absolutely essential. It's a matter of life and death, at least for your business, to ensure that your product is compliant, okay? It's not just about getting, your goods through the customs check and then it's all done. However, there's an even bigger nemesis out there. That's Amazon. in most cases that someone comes to us and says, oh shit, I have serious compliance issues in the US with my children's product. It's actually not the CPSC or state level regulators that is trying to get them. It's actually Amazon. Okay, Amazon rejects any listing, any children's product listing that doesn't have a correct CPC and test report. Okay, and they will cross-reference that is all matching. Okay, so they will make sure that your CPC is matching the requirements, that it is correct, that is matching the actual product, and also that the test report is valid for your specific product. So Amazon is really strict. Now, time for the FAQ before we finish this up. So I'm importing products from overseas. Am I or the manufacturer responsible for ensuring compliance? And it's always the importer, without exceptions, that is fully responsible for ensuring that the product is technically compliant, that there is a test report issued by an accredited testing company, it's correctly labeled, and with the correct documentation. Okay, you will not get advice or guidance from overseas manufacturers. Okay, it's always your responsibility as an importer to ensure compliance, and non-compliant products are subject to forced recalls, and importers that import non-compliant products are subject to major fines. So, who covers the lab testing costs? Well, that's also the importer, okay? Or if you're a manufacturer, a cross-border seller, then it's up to you to cover the lab testing costs. But it's always the seller, or the importer, that has to cover the lab testing costs, okay? So if you're importing products, say from China or elsewhere in Asia or from anywhere, it doesn't matter where it is really, you have to cover the lab testing costs, and your manufacturer will not do it for you. Okay, I know CPSIA, it's very straightforward, but it can still be a bit confusing. So if you have questions, you want assistance, then go to compliancegate.com/help. Fill out some information about your product, about the category, where it's manufactured, where you plan to sell it, and we will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours. Thank you for watching this video.